Hey, do us a favor. If you like listening to the show, please just take a few minutes, not even a few minutes, 1 minute to go into Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show.
This is Random Badassery.
All right. Well, let's get into the meat of the show. Boom. Let's. I'm not sure how I want to do this charity thing at the beginning. I'm not sure how to just jump in. We're in a learning stage right now.
Yeah, just do it.
Just do it. I want to start every episode. Everybody want to start doing beginning every episode briefly with just focusing on every month, a different charity. We're not getting anything out of this because it's a charity. I just want to promote charities, and I'm starting with a very well-known charity, but I plan on doing some research and finding charities where your money is going to go a long way, and maybe charities you haven't heard of before. But where we're going to start today is with St. Jude. So if you don't know what St. Jude is, you've probably been living in a hole. But St. Jude, not only do they do research for cancer, for specifically children's cancer, but they also take care of the families. If you have a child with cancer, like previous guest Mark Ruiz, you go to St. Jude's. I don't remember if he went to St. Jude's or not, but you go to St. Jude's and the treatment is free. And if you have to stay in a hotel because you don't live near the hospital, St. Jude's pays for that. It's a fantastic fucking charity. And how could you want children to die? So that's my plug for St. Jude's. I'm going to put a link. It's going to be in the top of the episode. It's going to say donate to St. Jude or something like that. So please consider doing that. Even just a couple bucks goes a long way. I know that if, thousands of people give $1, that's thousands of dollars.
Yep.
You don't have to give 1,000. Be cool if you did. I wish I had 1,000 to give, to be honest.
I think what happens with people sometimes when they don't want to, or they feel apprehensive about donating to something that they feel like would be helpful is, it's hard to, say part with, a large amount of money if you don't actually see something, coming back from it with a lot of people's mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like thinking, okay, well then I'll give something a little bit, but then they're like, well, then they feel guilty about I only, gave $1. It's like, well, yeah, but a place, a foundation such as this or any is not looking for one person to come in and carry the load and
exactly
fulfill the amount and fulfill the need. It's like voting. If everybody voted, then all of the votes come in and it's the max amount you can get, and no one's just looking at one person. Well, what did you do and what did you say? No, it's just everyone collectively, all the cogs make the wheel. So if everybody donates $1 or $2 or someone donates 20, you donate 5, doesn't matter. It's
being on a team. It's a team effort.
Right, yeah. It's the overall just amount of people being involved, not the amount that each person is giving.
So please, let's all be a team and go to St. Jude's and give some money. Okay. So in prep, by the way, everybody, that's Tom's voice.
Hello.
Tom's back.
Back from birthday and barbecue.
Yeah. Go to the Patreon. If you guys $5 and up level, you'll be able to hear what was that, 40 minutes of chatter we did before we started this?
Oh, wait, we didn't start? Yeah, no, something like that. I think it was 20 to 35 minutes.
Yeah, random chatter. That's what I'm calling it. Hear about his barbecue adventures more. So, I've been working on, I don't usually do a ton, weeks and weeks of research on episodes. But there's something that Lam and I had talked about a long time ago that I started research on. And I'm saving it for the episode with him so I can continue on the episode. But when I was coming in this week, I'm like, oh my God, I've been focusing on that and this other project I've been working on. What am I going to talk about with Tom today?
What are we going to talk about?
What is the topic going to be? And I've recommended this so many times. If you guys are not subscribed to Red Hand Files, which is Nick Cave's newsletter where people send in questions and he answers them, it is one of the most enlightening things on the internet out there. And I was reading that earlier today, and it's really funny because the guy is a poet that's writing in, and he's saying that his girlfriend doesn't like to read his poetry because she doesn't want to hear him talking about the quote lusty girls on the subway. And so Nick Cave suggests to him, he says something, he says, well, what about what's right in front of you? Actually, the exact quote, which shows you, number one, how articulate Nick Cave is even in an email. He says, having said that, over time, I have discovered great poetic and personal value in writing about the familiar, that which is in front of you, that which you see every day, that which sleeps beside you. For often that quotidian presence is the most extraordinarily complex and dangerous thing of all. So basically he's telling the guy, he's like, why don't you write about your girlfriend? Because maybe you're avoiding that because it's hard. And that got me thinking, what is in front of me? That's a topic that I'm, how many thoughts we have that, I'm focused on this thing with this episode thing with Lamb, but then my mind is not only thinking about that. I'm just telling myself that's the only thing I'm thinking about. There's how many thousands of thoughts we have a day. And I realized there is one that's been on my mind pretty hard for even before that.
Let's hear it.
And it's about connecting thoughts. So my favorite podcast, my favorite podcast is called Weird Studies. And it's two guys talking, except these guys are, I would say, brilliant. One of them is a college professor, and the other one is a filmmaker. And they just have these intense conversations about literature, movies, even sometimes they step into the paranormal. But it's so academic in, that's like a negative term, but it's just so intelligent. And one of the guys had written this piece. I don't have the name of the piece in front of me, but it was about Stranger Things and watching, I think he wrote it after the first season of Stranger Things, and about the significance of analog technology in Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. How the first season of Stranger Things seems to insinuate that there aren't computers yet because they purposely ignore there's no computers in there at all, even though that's like the age where the computer was really just becoming huge. Instead, they focus on like ham radios, analog technologies. So he writes this whole piece about that, and I'm reading it and I'm going, like, I believe I'm a reasonably intelligent person. What is the difference between me and him? Like, why am I not able to connect? Like, I can watch the show, but I'm not watching it going, what is the underlying implication here? And the reason, obviously, I'm wondering is because I want to write more things, and I would love to write stuff like what he was writing there, which I know I'm capable of. But why? What is the block there? Why am I not, when I see this, why isn't it connecting to this? And why isn't it connecting to this? So the general topic, which I actually have more stuff on, but we'll obviously, what we always do, chat about it as we go through every step. Mm-hmm. The idea of connecting thoughts. Do you ever have that feeling where you're like, I feel like I have all this knowledge, but the things aren't, the hubs aren't connecting, and I'm not creating this pastiche of knowledge?
Fuck yeah. I mean, that's kind of like a daily struggle with me, with how my brain seems to, like I've been saying to a lot of people lately, like I feel like I'm out of sync, like
that's a good way to say it.
I feel like my place in moving throughout this, space in the universe, like I'm supposed to be fit in like the old school cutouts where you had like the dotted line cut out of like the person, you put like the little sticker in place of that. I feel like I'm just slightly shifted off to the side out of that, and it's like I'm moving around, and it's like I'm trying to run in your dreams kind of thing, where it's like the motion's there, but it's not really moving the way I'm intending it to go. So yeah, as far
I like to call it the fog too.
Yeah,
where you're like,
for me, for me, with like how my brain's been working for some time now, it's like it just feels like some days it's even more impossible to get, even though I can see, getting from point A all the way through to, point F, trying to get all that together. It's like, well, it's nothing's happening. I don't know. It's like, is Mercury in Gatorade? I don't know what's happening right now.
Right. You start looking at your diet. You're like, am I deficient in,
Yeah.
Is it this magnesium deficiency people is always talking about? Peoples, I mean.
Yeah, humans. But no, yeah, I struggle with that a lot. Even just in communication and conversations with people, it's like feeling like I should completely, totally understand what's happening, but I don't. And why don't I? Like, what am I missing? Like, I feel like there's something up with me and how I'm functioning. It's like,
yeah, you start to question, like me, I'm like, do I have a learning disability? Like,
right. Yeah. No. Am I starting
like
to come
you're
down
90% of the way there, but you're like, why can't I get that other 10%? It's not like we're, with no insult to anybody, but it's not like we are people who don't articulate our thoughts on a regular basis. I mean, that's the whole point of the show, is trying to reasonably at some level have an intelligent conversation. So obviously our brains are capable of what we're expecting from them. But I'm like, okay, when's the next gear kick in?
Yeah. No. I remember hearing there was something floating around the internet where people were trying to say like, oh, at certain points in history, like the world ended and what we're living in now is like a Matrix type simulation. And that's why I feel like out of in that fog,
our characters maxed out.
Pretty much. Yeah. Or like, that's why you see like a dude just standing against the wall, just like, just like, homeless dudes out on the street, just walking in circles. Seems like they're glitching out. How like when it would happen to me all the time when I turn on or get in a video game and like the perspective or the controls would be like swapped for somebody else. Like I'm used to the left thumb controlling, like looking up, looking down, looking left, looking right, and then the right thumb controlled going forward, going back, going, like the actual movement. But then you get it with someone else's, and then all you're doing is just like facing the ceiling and like walking around in like a circle, or you're staring at the floor and like running into a wall.
Or you pick up like one of the shooting games or whatever, and somebody's like reverse the x-axis. Up is down and down is up. You're like, oh, is this an airplane?
Yeah. I hate that. But I feel like that almost on like a daily or two, multiple times a week. Just the other day, I was like trying to, I get up and I'm just like, I feel kind of foggy, feel drained. I feel like I'm being pulled down. Like there's like Jacob Marley, there's like chains just pulling me down. And I'm like bumping into the wall, which I never bump into, like I'm just off. Yeah, things aren't like I'm reaching for something, but I'm just slightly off to the right and I knock it over instead. It's like, what the fuck is happening to me right now?
Well, what people might think where we're going to go with this subject, if they listen to the show enough, we're not going to go where you think we're going to go. Yes, the internet and over stimulus and social media are probably to blame for some of this. We've talked about that before. That's not where I'm going to go with this today. One of the things, so I had this in my mind, so I'm thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so I start looking up like things. So I'm like, let's do a little research, prepare for the episode, do a little bit of research, start hunting around like for little sparks of things about, like brain, making connections. I never ended up searching for neuroplasticity, but I should have. And it reminded me of a book. Some of the things that came up reminded me of a book I read, which is called Thinking. Excuse me. That's called burping in the middle of a sentence. Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Now, what's the essential idea behind this book is that we have two ways of thinking. So people often misread this title as Thinking, Fast and Slow. It's thinking, fast and slow. In other words, two modes of thinking, fast thinking, slow thinking. Mm-hmm. Or as he refers to them in the book, System 1 and System 2. So System 1 is like how your brain functions when a bus is about to hit you. Like, oh shit, move, right? Fast thinking. System 2 is how much wood do I need to fix the back fence? Okay, Now I need a piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to put in this many. Slow thinking.
Mm.
And it's easy to, it's what's I think anybody that's not read the full book or they've just read a synopsis of the book, what's easy to think what he's talking about here is, okay, so system 1 is instinct and system 2 is more what we would call, quote, thought.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what he's actually saying. What he's actually saying is closer to reaction versus contemplation or calculation.
Mm.
So, for example, system 1 can rely on knowledge. It's not the part of your brain that doesn't need knowledge, the instinctual primal part of your brain. So, for example, if I ask you your birthday, your birthday.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to answer pretty quick. You don't have to put much thought into it. That's system 1. You're so familiar with the answer that it's reactionary.
Yeah.
Like, when's your birthday? Boom, comes out.
Yeah.
You didn't have to retrieve that information. Whereas system 2 is more, what day of the week was your 16th birthday on? Like, okay, I can figure that out, but this is going to take me a little bit of time.
Right.
So that's really the difference between those two systems. And like I said, we're not going to go into the social media thing, but I do think that there's an argument where we could take a sidebar here about how being able to react to things quickly, like especially on something like Twitter, you're feeding system 1 and not feeding enough of system 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's that. I'll pause there so we can go back and forth for a little bit before I go deeper. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like I exist primarily and always have in the contemplative, calculating way of thinking. There is the natural, when I'm driving and stuff, I'm like exploiting gaps and trying to get there as fast as possible. Get out of my way. There's no reason for you going that slow. But generally, everything that I'm doing is like, I thrive in just, analyzing and thinking and taking my time, and like kind of being slothy with it, where it's like, there's no need to rush, it's funny because there's certain things where I'm very much like, why are you doing this slow? Why is this taking so long? Let's go. And then things that are more to me, in what makes sense in my brain, more important. It's like, let's not be too hasty. Let's just let's take a moment. Let's maybe take a few moments. Like, yeah, get to it. It's still light out. Like it's.
Well, before you go any further, we don't want to confuse patience with system 2 thinking, though. Those are two different things.
Yes.
System 2 is thinking about something extensively. Patience is a virtue.
Yeah. Well, to me, they all kind of mush together.
Well, yeah, you do need
because
patience.
you have the patience in order to be able to think like that.
I just don't want to confuse the listeners, though.
Yeah. But yeah, I know a lot of people that are the opposite of me and exist in that like now, like
right,
quick.
Yeah, what's on the radio? It doesn't matter. Just it's music. Yeah. That's system 1, right? I just need something in the background.
Yeah, remember I was talking about my coworker, he can't deal with silence.
Yeah, exactly.
He has to have something going on. I don't care what it is. Music, podcast, whatever. It's got to put something on. It's like there's days that I'm not thinking about that because to me, I can sit there and just like the music in my head can just go along, or I'm just paying attention to what it is that I'm doing and I'm thinking, and the thoughts in my head are kind of creating that background noise. But for someone else, it can't have external silence. It has to have something going. So it's very interesting to kind of see how that kind of stuff can help or hinder a situation or like you doing something.
And I mean, to be clear, even though I would say that I'm probably the same as you, like I reside more in system 2 than I do in system 1, at least on I think actually it says somewhere in the book that almost everybody thinks that they're system 2 and not system 1. But even still, there are still a lot of times where we're using system 1 and we're not realizing it, of course, right? Because it doesn't require thought. But the reason that even there's probably depths of system 2, like there's more shallow uses of system 2, like, okay, I only had to think about that for 5 minutes, whereas something that takes 3 days of thought, like hard thought. And I think what that fog and that gap that you and I feel, and I'm sure more than you and I know Lamb would agree with us if he was here, and pretty much anybody listening probably, it is that resistance. And I've used the term resistance before in reference to creative resistance, but what I'm going to use it here more as is friction. The harder you have to think about something, the longer you have to think about something, the more friction there is for you to do it. Mm-hmm. And what we're probably not really battering up against a wall or in a haze. What we're doing is reaching a place of discomfort.
Yeah.
Where I was like, there's it's probably system 1 part of our brain going, oh, that's going to be fucking hard. So just ignore that.
Yeah, I'll do that later.
And that's one of the ways that they explain the way that the two work together, because they're always working together, right? You're never in just one system. They work together. So system 1 is the generator of ideas. So system 1 is always thinking of ideas, even stupid shit, just ideas, literally. It's just the idea maker. Lamb and I have mentioned before where a thought that you don't want to have, I think he was referencing like a dark thought, like a suicidal thought. It can pop in your head. You might not be suicidal, but it can pop in your head. And I made a reference to one of the famous Friends episodes where Chandler says something about your parents popping up in your head while you're having sex.
Yeah.
That's system 1. Its job is literally just to keep shoveling ideas.
Yeah.
And it's shoveling them to system 2, and then system 2 is the discerner that goes, oh, I'll take that one. Oh, I'll take that one, while the rest of them are just, falling like Skittles on the floor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the other way it also works is system 1 tries to solve everything. And when it can't solve something, then it turns around to its big brother and goes, do you know how to do this? Like system 1's looking at that fence going, you need how much wood? I don't want to do that. Do you want to do that, system 2? But
That's
system 2
take more time.
System 2 is like a sleeping giant. Where it's like, yeah, I've got to have the giant kick this guy's ass because he can kick my ass. But the giant's asleep. So he's going to be groggy. So it's going to be a little while before he can kick your ass. And I think that's what that haze is maybe we're out of practice. I can say for me, for sure. I can't speak for you. I'll let you speak for yourself. But I'm out of practice of waking the giant.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely agree with that, because I feel like I'm being able to come up with so many ideas and so many, starting blocks, but unable to, find the gun to start the race kind of thing. Because that's kind of the basis of that feeling stuck thing. It's like I stand in here. Once this mud dries, I can get my feet out of it and start walking. It's like you just feel stuck and just not that you're unmotivated, but just like slow to get going.
Mm-hmm. And then I think what happens, and this is not in the book, this is just me stipulating an idea. Actually, stipulating is probably not the right verb.
That's all right. Someone will correct you.
This is just me presenting an idea. I think what happens is if the giant's too slow, system 2 wakes up too slow, that we kick it back to system 1.
Yeah.
I'm like, never mind.
Because that's when people just kind of hastily make things, make decisions. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, just fuck it, screw it. No, I'll just do it. And then regret, or, hey, look, I got lucky and it worked out. It's thinking, man. It's dangerous
definitely
game.
it is a dangerous game. I definitely think that I've been guilty of kicking system 1 things back, or system 2 things back to system 1. Like, for example, in the last episode with Lamb, I talked about how I'm trying to practice spontaneous planning but delayed action. So, like, if I have an idea, go ahead, plan it out. Just don't do it. And then wait. And then see if that idea is actually something you want to do. Because in the past, I'd have an idea and I'd go, okay, oh, that's a good idea. And it would, it would slip into system 2 where I'd start thinking about it a little bit. And then if I liked it enough, it was like, boom. And I just kick it back to system 1 and just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you end up doing, like I have done with many, many creative things, is I'm continually shifting. I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. So now what I try to do to maybe not necessarily to stay in system 2 more, but to give system 2 time to wake up, is I let things stew.
Yeah.
I think, for example, this charity thing I've been thinking about for 6 months. And so I'll find a way to do it. Like it's not necessarily that I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just didn't find the place where I was like, that's now's the time I want to start doing that.
Yeah.
And so finally I was like, okay, now it's time. But that's one of the few things that I've been patient to wait for. And I think that's another thing too, is really important, is to let things simmer, so that system 2 has time to really work its magic. Because system 2, like I said earlier, there are ranges of system 2. It's not just I had to think about that for 15 minutes or an hour. Sometimes you need to think about something even on a subconscious, buried in the back of your head way for 6 months. And you might not change your opinion on it at all, but you just needed to let it sit there until it felt like it was the right time, which kind of goes back to your patience thing a little bit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you're getting to then like, oh, well, then you're just a perfectionist. I know you're just a you're just a Virgo.
Yeah.
You're just this. It's like there's some sort of
for listeners, by the way, Tom and I are both Virgos, so
yeah,
we understand that.
Right? Yeah, because it's like you want to feel like everything is, as it should be and as it would need to be for the best possible outcome. And doing anything other than that is, it's not being fair or not being respectful to whatever it is that you're trying to get done. It almost makes it feel like it's just kind of like a cheap attempt. It's like, well, if I'm not going to do it the right way, why am I going to do it? So wait till I can do it correctly.
So what I started thinking about, like going back to my specific usage here, where it's like, okay, if I want to be able to start connecting thoughts, like, for example, like J.F. Martel from Weird Studies does when he writes something. If I want to start doing that, how do I do it? So I had to use system 2, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously I have a list of things here. We'll go through each of them individually. So first one is you want to have a lot of input. You want to be taking in good stuff. Like my mom, always used to say when I was growing up, garbage in, garbage out. So if you watch inane stuff, you're going to have inane thoughts. So finding good input, bringing that input in, and then what you're going to get from that is 2 things. You're going to get knowledge, which is good for what I'm thinking about, having that knowledge. But you're also going to have sparks. You're going to read something and go, oh, that's an idea. Like that, reading that Red Hand Files thing, that's a spark. Mm-hmm. So input. I'm throwing input at you now. I'm going to stop at each one of them so you can reply to each of them. What are your thoughts on the input thing? Or do you have any?
Not really.
Pass. You covered it.
Pretty much. I mean,
it's pretty basic.
Otherwise I'm just going to sit here and just retell the things that you said, but just jumble the words differently so it sounds like I said them.
Okay, next one then. Something we're doing right now. Talking. Conversation. Very important for stimulating this kind of thought. Not only because you have to listen and you have to deal with something unpredictable, which is the other person's side of a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but also because you're forced to articulate your ideas and oftentimes continually re-articulate it in different ways because somebody's not understanding you.
Yeah. No, I was having that discussion today. I have a real hard time with repeating myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't like to repeat myself, especially if I feel like the first time I said whatever it is I said as blatantly clear and simple as possible. Or it's like, how did you not get it the first time? You know? And then because what it does is frustrates me, and like, it's happened a lot, in like work situations and stuff where it's like, it's no longer, I'm not getting mad because I have to say the thing. It's like, I shouldn't have to say it again. And the reason I'm saying it again is because like the other person chose to like, not listen. Like that's the impression I get at first, mostly in work situations. It's like, oh, well, you just either don't want to listen to me. Why don't you want to listen to me? Or why didn't you listen to me? Oh, it's because you either don't respect the thing that I'm saying, or you don't think that I know a fucking thing or two. So, I feel like if you're in a situation where both people are confident that the communication between one another is, it's valued and heard, and the attempt is there to be heard, even if it's like an unpleasant conversation, it's like, well, you're both there, you're both present, you're both trying to get it and figure it out. then at that point, I usually don't feel bad about, afterwards, I don't feel bad about, or frustrated repeating myself or kind of going over the same points. Maybe in the moment I'll feel differently, but overall, but yeah.
I think it's good to also have discussions where the person doesn't give a shit. Yeah. Because if like, for example, now you're talking about maybe in your specific, like in the work thing, you're talking about communicating something that you need the other person probably to do or to know.
Or at least to know or retain.
Right. Whereas if you were in the case of like, say you're talking politics, right? Maybe the point you want to make is really, really important to you that this person get it.
Yeah.
So you're going to try. You're going to repeat yourself because it's more important to you than not repeating yourself, right?
Right.
Because you're focused on that. And that's where I think the value of some of this articulation comes through, where if I say, I wish I could remember what episode it was, where Lam and I were talking about, I think it was I'll put the name of the episode in the notes, but Lam and I were talking about creating a personal information manual. Like here's stuff that I've learned and I can just search here for it. Like what's the best thing that I've found in my personal experience for a cough, and have it there so that when I have a cough, all I do is search cough and it goes, take this. Oh, that's right. Cool. But he wasn't understanding that's what I was saying. He thought I was saying something along the lines of creating a rule book for everything in your life.
Yeah.
Like if a girlfriend says this, do this, and it was a minor difference between our 2 points, but it took the conversation a very different way. And I realized I'm like, I communicated it into him in a way that whether I thought it was good or not, he didn't get it. Therefore, I failed in communicating. So in having to communicate to him again to where he got it this time, I actually learned more about what I was saying.
Absolutely. That happens a lot. And I think a lot of people don't, they fail to pay attention to it. You're learning as much about yourself throughout the day while interacting with other people and other things as much as you're learning about those things, because you might not realize what it is that you're outwardly like saying or signaling, with behavior that like you might think that you're giving off this delightful atmospheric, I'm happy kind of image, but in reality you might not be. I think that's a term that's coined a lot, is the the RBF, the resting beard face. Everyone thinks I'm pissed off all the time, and I don't know why. But it's like, for someone like me that thinks a lot and is in my head most of the time, it's like, if I'm just like kind of walking around and just kind of in the zone, it's like, I've had multiple people come up to me throughout the years, be like, I thought you were just like this fucking angry asshole. It's like, why the fuck did you think that? You've never talked to me. It's like, well, I wasn't going to talk to you. Look at you walking around all the time with that serious look on your face. I was like, well, I'm either at work or I'm busy or I'm like thinking about something. It's like, you're just making the assumption just by, the outward look of the RBF. Come on, that's not cool.
Pre-beard even, I used to get it. I was freshman in college, so what was I? 18 at the time, 18 years old. I had I still have a shaved head, but I had hair back then. I had chosen to shave my head as opposed to now.
It was a choice, okay.
And I had chin hair, but I just had, like the billy goat hair, where it's just on your chin.
Yeah.
That's it. That's, like I didn't have the beard can make us look more intimidating, which is part of the reason some of us grow them. And I think I was like in my second semester, and I got to know somebody that was I had in a class. I didn't know this person was in a class I had because I was in my own, like you said, in my own head. And I wasn't paying attention to every single person in my class. But I got to know this person in the second semester that I had been in a class with in my first.
Yeah.
And he said almost pretty much the exact same thing. He said, I was terrified of you. I said, what? He's like, I don't know, man. You just look like you can kick my ass. And I don't know. I'm like, really? I'm like, why would I want to do that? He's like, I don't know. You just look mean. Hey, sorry. I'm not. Pretty nice person. Ended up becoming one of my good friends. But
yeah, that makes me like, that brings me to a topic that I've thought about bringing up on the show for quite some time. And it's like, it makes me wonder then, there seems to be, I run into it all the time where, and this might take us off topic for a minute, but I'll try to keep it brief.
It's okay. I have it on a list, so I'll remember where we left off too.
Especially since I've been of the bearded persuasion, complete strangers feel it necessary to just approach me out of nowhere for no reason, or to scream out at me from across the fucking crowded fucking area. Nice beard, man. Magnificent beard. That beard dominates. It's like, even to the point where like there's been times where like I'll be walking around like sunglasses on, earphones in, like obviously not open to, not receptive to, like, hey, open for business, come say hi. And people would like almost like awkwardly move their body into my line of sight so they could like wave at me and get my attention and be like, I really like your beard. Now, I wonder, because it makes no sense to me. I don't ever feel the need or the impulse or the actual like push over the edge to make the action to walk by a complete stranger and be like, I like your shoes. Or, I understand that it's like a compliment, but at what point, like, what is it that's making you feel comfortable to walk up to a complete stranger and just comment on something about them that's just too, it just grows up my face. It's just hair, I
don't think it's a thought process. I think we're talking system one to bring it back to the topic in a way.
No, yeah,
without even meaning to. I think it's system one that they're on a low level. They're emotionally moved to do it. I know that I'm not most people would say in public, I'm a fairly reserved person. I mean, like, I'm not the guy that's walking. My grandfather used to go to the grocery store and he'd be gone for 3 hours. I think I've told this on the show before. Because he would talk to everybody as he walked down the aisle. Not in like some desperate way, but he just really liked talking to people. So like somebody's picking avocados up and he's picking up avocados. Now they're having a conversation. He wasn't like hunting them down.
Right. Yeah.
Or keeping them too long. He just talked to them for like maybe a minute, maybe two. And then boom, continue what he was doing. I'm not really that person. But there are times where I do things like what you're saying, but I don't. for me, it's never just that. There's usually some back and forth. But for example, when I'm walking the dog, every once in a while, I'll see somebody and you make eye contact and it's like, hi, how are you? Oh, why did I choose to say hi to that person?
Right.
And I didn't say it to the last 6 people.
Yeah.
And I think it's that system 1 where it's just, there's something, maybe it's a subconscious something, like for me, in my case, maybe there's just some subtle thing in their facial expression that was different than everybody else's that kicked that into gear for me.
Yeah. And
maybe they're remembering something and we're like, oh, I love beards. I got to tell them.
Right. I feel like with that, like with what you're saying, like sometimes that has to do with kind of what, and not attract in the sense of like I want to mate with this person, or I think primarily it comes down with that, but it's like what attracts you to another human being.
Right.
It's like something in the eyes, it's like we made eye contact and it's like, oh, I felt this person's interesting. They made me feel something. Hello, how are you?
Uh-huh.
Or it's just like you see someone and they're just like, well, that person seems like a fucking grump. I don't want to talk to them. I'll give them a head nod. I'll give them a little, sarcastic smile.
Or the chin up.
Right, yeah.
the reverse nod.
Yeah, the whole look at my nostrils. And I wonder too, when I think, constantly about like the huge amount of just random compliments and like hellos and stuff I get from people just because I have a beard on my face. And I wonder if it's enhanced these days because we are a culture of see something, double tap it, give it a like.
That's a good point.
It's like you forget that you're in the real world. It's like you can easily just go through, because Michael, there's things, either pages that are like run for certain things on Instagram that I follow that like I don't know the people that run it, but it's like for like one of the master builders at the Fender Custom Shop making guitars, and they'll post like one of their newly finished creations, and I'll just like, oh, I'll send a comment, outstanding, well done. It's like that's almost the same thing, but the platform on Instagram, it's set up for that. Me walking out, hand in hand with a girlfriend, walking down an aisle of a store or whatever, and just someone just like almost like in traffic, just going by you in the other direction, like that beer dominates. It's like, what the fuck?
Like, I think it's our tribal instinct too. Safety.
Yeah.
It's a subconscious thing where it's like, I like that thing. That person is displaying that thing.
Yeah, I guess I'm peacocking it a little bit.
Making connection there, I've created a soft connection of some tribal thing, right?
Yeah.
And, they're not thinking, oh, I'm going to make this guy part of my tribe. They're just, like, for example, it happens to me all the time when I wear one specific shirt. If I wear my Nirvana Sliver shirt, 4 times a day, great shirt. Love that band. Nirvana, fuck yeah, man.
Yeah.
They're establishing tribal communication. Where it's like, I'm in your tribe. And it's usually somebody, there's 50-50. It's either a middle-aged man wearing cargo shorts and a plaid short sleeve button-up shirt. Or it's a younger kid wearing a band shirt. And so the younger kid's going like, oh, you're cool. Right. Because you're wearing something I've heard of and you're old.
Yeah, and I have one too.
So you must be one of those cooler old people. And then the middle-aged guy, which I'm middle-aged too, but what he's saying is, okay, yeah, I know I'm dressed like this, but I used to be cool. And when I was cool, I liked that band. So he's reestablishing his cool.
Right.
And so beard's got to be the same thing. You're getting it from men, you're getting it like they're establishing the connection of manliness. I appreciate your beard. I appreciate masculinity. And from women, it's probably just like either reminds me of somebody that was in my family or it's hot.
It's funny too, because I've been like, I'm not the only person on the planet with a beard. And I've been with other people that have them.
You have kind eyes though.
And But the thing is, it seems like to some people I don't. To some people I do.
Maybe they're not looking at your eyes. Maybe they're looking like your
Hey,
mouth
man,
or
my
something.
eyes are up here, man. Because I remember when went to Carlos's bachelor party out in Tahoe. It was
I need to have him on the show, by the way.
Yeah, that's actually a good guest idea. I met, and he's now my friend, and we worked together downtown at San Pedro. And he's got, a long beard, shaved head, he's, a stocky dude, heavier set than me. And the first time I hung out with him and met him was at Carlos's bachelor party. And we went to this little, it was like claimed to be like the oldest bar in Nevada or something. I can't remember the name of it. And we're there at the bar, and some people are playing pool, some people are sitting out front. A few of us were at the bar, and there was a group, mixed co-eds playing pool, and like these two girls walked by, and the one like just kind of did the typical like I can see when it's coming. I know who's noticed me when I walked in because I can always tell who like looks and then either mentions and does like a pantomime beard thing with their hand over their face or whatever,
like stroking it,
like wishing that they could, whatever it is, or like talking to their, it's like a guy talking to his girlfriend or talking to his friend, like, oh man, I wish I could. It's always the same thing. Oh, I can't do that. Have you ever tried? Well, no, but okay. But yes, so these two girls walked by, and the one like, I was like, here it comes. And she's just like, I just have to say, like a really nice beard, and walks away. And two of the girls that were at the bar that were in the group were like, or that were listening and all that, were like, what did those two girls just say to you? I was like, oh, they just were commenting on my beard. And I look over at my friend Austin, who I just now am like, at this point, we're just like kind of getting to know each other. We've only known each other for probably less than 24 hours. I look at him, and I'm like, you know what I'm talking about, right? And he just looks at me dead and just goes, no, I don't. I was like, oh, okay. I guess it only happens to me. And then when we started working together, so we're with each other every single day. And sometimes I feel bad, but it was just funny because it would happen. We'd be standing side by side, and someone would like look at me and just compliment and be like, hey man, wow, beard, boo, 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 suck dick, suck dick, suck dick. And then they'd walk away and Austin would just be like, the fuck? What is this shit? He's like, I need to get you a stick to just beat these people away. And I was like, and then I started doing it, be like, he's got a beard too. And like kind of point and be like, yeah. And like, walk away. It's like,
but he has a shaved head. Maybe he's a biker.
So I started thinking, I was like, well, I can't shave my head because then there would just be two of us with shaved heads. And then if they just started like even more like, oh my God, I loved your beard and shaved head, it would be like, all right, this is bullshit. What the fuck?
That's why I can't grow my beard long. There can only be one long beard on the fucking podcast. So I keep mine short.
Oh man, no, see.
No, mine just looks weird when it gets a certain length.
No, it's got to be long. It used to be a thing where like, you couldn't even go into a church if you didn't have a beard. Like,
well, my chin hair, like the actual chin part, doesn't grow any further. So I end up with like this reverse V.
That's awesome.
It's weird. Okay, let's get back on topic.
Right. Even though we kind of stayed with it, but
sort of. We went into Beardland, which is good. It's good to have diversions. Okay, so to refresh our memory, having good input. Mm-hmm. These are ways that I could think of to enhance system 2. Talking, conversations, listening, articulation. The next one seems really obvious, so we should probably do the obvious one. It's silence, thought, sitting and thinking, which also includes reducing your input. So having times where you turn off the TV and you just sit there and think about what you have to think about. This is something I find myself not doing often enough. Where I'm, God, I can't think of an example right now. There's something I had to do about a week ago where I was like, okay, I got to figure that out. And I'm watching like TV and I'm like, yeah, I got to figure that out eventually. And then it hits me. I'm like, or how about now?
Yeah.
What the fuck am I waiting for?
I'm just watching TV right now. This is not important because sometimes what happens to me is I'll be doing that. And then whatever the stimulus it is that I'm, partaking in at the moment, whether it be like TV or looking up shit on YouTube or fucking reading something. It's like that'll start to push that idea and that thought out of my brain. It'll push it further back, and then I'll forget about it and be like, there was something I needed to do. It'll come back to me. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And if it does, maybe I'll realize that it was that thing that I forgot about. Or I just treat it as a new idea.
What's funny, I just found a piece of a word that was cut out of a magazine from what it looks like. It's just randomly sitting on my desk. It's smaller than my fingernail, and it just says, no. I don't know what that
the
was.
Universe is a funny thing, my friend.
Oh, or maybe it says on.
Or I was going to say that.
But anyways, but I think with two things that are going on when that happens, when we put off the thought process. So obviously one of them is, not wanting to go into system 2. So, like fear, or just like, that doesn't sound fun. Like sitting here passively watching the show or listening to this album is more fun than, figuring out what my bills are every month instead of just guessing. That could be one where you're like, why don't I, what's my budget? What's my monthly budget or whatever?
Yeah.
But then there's also input addiction, which we're all guilty of because of social media, but also because of television, because of radio, because of advertisement. Going back to way before social media, we're continually being inundated with input to where reducing that and turning that off, like your friend. Like, I can't deal with silence.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Your body and your brain are made for it.
Yeah. What do you do when you sleep, man?
I know people that sleep with TVs on.
I'll put on stuff for background. I used to always sleep to music, and not because I needed the sound, was because of my love for music. Like, there was nothing better for me than to just like not only be, wrapped in comfy blankets on my bed, but also have my ears and my inner sounds be wrapped in comfy blankets of music.
Right.
It just made me feel that much more comfortable. Like I felt so much more at ease. And, some of my favorite fucking shit to listen to sleep, I don't know if you ever tried it, but Gregorian chant. Goddamn son of a bitch.
You must have like stuff. Skyrim-like dreams.
I don't think I've ever had a bad night's sleep if I've had Gregorian chant going.
I'm going to have to try that once just to see.
And there was a very popular, I think it was in the 90s.
I know which one. It was like the first, like huge.
It went on the charts, and it was just called Chant. It was Benedictine monks of Santo Domingo de Silos. That CD, that was the first time I tried that. It came out in 94. And sometime probably late 90s, I would say probably like 98, 99. First time I would put that on because I would listen to it, just kind of like you would any music. But then I was like, it's kind of a soothing. Maybe I try, because you always hear about like going to sleep to like Mozart and classical music and makes you smarter, or like falling asleep to fucking white noise and all this different shit. I'm like, well, what about sleeping to this? So I'd put that on, and I just like kind of became addicted to it. And then as technology and shit progresses, then like all I had to do was just go on Pandora and just type in Gregorian chant and create a radio station, and then it's just giving me a whole slew of them. But even
because falling asleep is basically turning on your subconscious. So something that's going to stimulate subconscious thought faster. Like they say, if you sit and try to actually everything that you're thinking about, you actually try to picture it visually, you'll fall asleep faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, I think your oldest bar is the Genoa bar.
That could be right.
All right. So, two more things about thought, about contemplative thought. There are two forms of this as well. Both are necessary, I think. First is the one that we've obviously been talking about, which is sitting and actively thinking, working your way towards something, reasoning something out. But then there's also like what I do when I walk is I'm not specifically focusing on something, but I also don't have any obvious input, other than the world and footsteps and trees and dogs, which is passive thought. I'm letting thoughts drift in, but I'm not trying to make them. And this or daydreaming is another way somebody would maybe refer to this. This is really important too for the making the connections, because this is where you make unlikely connections. It's important to do the active sitting and thinking, because you're purposely making connections. You're setting up steps and you're drawing, the architecture of something. But then when you're walking and things are drifting in, things that aren't already included in your subset that you're working with will drift in. Like, oh, all of a sudden you're thinking about Hawaii. Why am I thinking about Hawaii? Oh, because I remember reading that book by Michener and he said this. Oh, that totally relates to that thing that I was thinking about earlier. Boom. Mm-hmm. Now you've got this connection.
Yeah.
So that is really important too, because people seem to think this is only one way to just do this thing, and both are really important. You got to have both.
Yeah. Balance. The yin, the yang, the alpha and the omega.
The beginning and the end? I don't want this to end ever. I want to think in system 2 forever and burn out. Okay. So my favorite step, and which this one I think is, I don't want to say the most important, but it's the one I'm going to emphasize the most. Because I feel like to some degree, all the ones that we've talked about before are very obvious. Mm-hmm. And this one is obvious as well, but it is not as popular, we'll say, which is actually writing. Mm. And there's 3 forms of writing as well, because things happen in steps. So you have notes, journaling, and what I'm calling authoring. I'm calling it authoring because I already used the word writing. I didn't want to have it there.
Writing, and writing.
Yes, but 3 different kinds. So first of all, for notes, this goes back to what you were saying before. Like when you're watching TV, if you have this idea, the thing's going to force it out. That's why it's always important for me to have a scratch piece of paper and a pen within reach.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're really into the show, but you have an idea. Cool. Write it down and go back to the show.
Yeah, I started keeping a pen in my wallet years ago in high school.
Exactly.
One of the Fisher Space Pens. Fits right in where the wallet folds. Doesn't break or anything when you sit down. It's gold.
And you've seen my wallet. Yeah. It's a little tiny notebook with a Fisher Space Pen attached to it.
Yeah, see? Yeah.
And this is important so you can grab those things, right? You want to grab, but those are obvious things too. The reason I use the term scratch paper too is because you don't want this to be like your journal or your diary. Because these things, you need this to be able to be messy. It's got to be a piece of paper you can fucking throw anything at.
In my probably, let's see, early 20s, I was like doing that a lot where I would have like receipts all the fucking in my car. If I went to drive through, I'd stuff the receipt like even still now, I just have a shit ton of fucking random pieces of paper and envelopes and shit in my car. But it's like, that's all I did back in the day was like anything I could write on. And it was just everything, any blank piece of paper I had something written down on it. When I was feeling at my height of my, freedom out of high school and being like, I'm a creative. And I'm just like, any thought was fucking in my head was gold, but most likely they were not. But yeah, no, it was the most in tune and like content I'd felt with feeling like I had a handle on how I was thinking and feeling at that time, because I was like I was doing all of that. I was listening, I was inputting, I was fucking journaling, I was writing, I was fucking doing it all.
When the physical act of writing, this has been proven scientifically, I don't have the research in front of me, but writing cements things in your mind more. So like if you have things to do today, it's great to have an app. I'm not going to say anything bad about productivity apps and calendar in phones and stuff, because you can search them and they will alert you so you don't forget things. Paper can't do that. But you also probably should be writing them down.
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to do today? Write that down. Why? Because it's putting it into a different place in your mind. Now, when you take that same functioning, you take that same part of your brain and you apply that to ideas and stuff like what we're talking about, like, why can't I connect the lack of computers here with what it means for the universe in Stranger Things? Why can't I connect those two things? Mm-hmm. Well, the more you're writing down things, like you're saying, in our scrap notebooks, or on a receipt, or on an envelope, or on an index card that's just laying there, every time you're doing that, you're bringing those things into your brain in a more active way, so they're going to be more accessible to you. Yep. So you're going to be able to, like, how many times have you written something down? Like, I got to write this down so I don't forget it, but then you never forget it.
Well, because there's a physical connection to what it is.
Exactly. And you're taking action.
Yeah.
Which moves you out of passive into active, which is one of the biggest obstacles with the difference between System 1 and System 2. Is System 1, for the most part, actually not for the most part, is passive. It happens without your will. System 2 requires will. You have to will that thought. You have to will yourself into that process. And it's also really important when this one is the most, actually, one more thing about being messy and disorganized, I forgot. This is one of the dangers of buying really fancy notebooks, is something I've faced personally. You don't want to put messy things in there, or you don't want to write or have to scribble something out, and because it's a nice notebook.
Right. You're trying to get it to feel like a actual printed, something that people would go and pick off a shelf and read.
Yeah, like, oh, if I died and somebody picked this up, they'd think I was cool.
Yeah.
Which, to some degree, anybody that's buying a fancy journal and writing in nice handwriting in it, even if they're not consciously thinking, they're probably subconsciously thinking that. And those are great. I'm not going to say anything about that, because that's where I do my journal and my diary, whatever word you prefer. I do that in there, in one of those. But this scratch paper, as I've referred to it multiple times, this is just for doing all the stuff before the computer. Think about all the shit you used to do, where it's like, okay, grocery list on here, on this corner of the paper. Then I did a small little math thing right here. Maybe I did a little multiplication. Mm-hmm. And then over here, I just wrote out some band name ideas, then scribbled out 3 of them. What you end up with on the paper is not important, but you needed the paper to be able to do the things that you were doing, like the band name thing. It was the process of crossing things out. Yeah. You're never going to have to look at the list and go, what did I cross out? You just used it to get to so you're using it as a tool. So that's why having it able to do that is important too, because it's not just about capturing, it's about actually thinking on the paper. And Go ahead.
No, say it's because you are actually, like, when you say you scratched it out, it's like not only did you scratch it on the bit, but you were literally scratching it out of your head. It was like,
yes, exactly.
It was like on your fucking, like, people that, on the iPhone, you hold something, you swipe it over, and that little delete fucking button pops out. You hit that. It's the same fucking thing. But it's having that physical, for me, it's having that physical connection to something that was in my head. I've now seen it physically manifest on something that I can touch and I can pick up, I can tear it up, I can burn it, I can crumple it and throw it away, I can eat it. It's like, that makes whatever it is part of reality. And for me, it's important to always remember that I am at least I think I am, in a reality. And so by making
like that Stranger Things article, reality is analog.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by remaining grounded in the analog way of doing things, is I feel like it helps understand and utilize the non-analog things properly and in the right way and at the right times. Because you understand that, and I feel like you're reminded and kept aware at all times that if all of the digital, stuff goes away, and it easily can, you're still able to function and exist beyond that back into the real world, which we and the digital things all exist.
Right. Oh, and that's not even, we haven't even mentioned the different types of learners too. If you're a visual learner and you don't have scrap paper, thinking's probably really hard for you.
Yeah.
You need to like actually play with, I think I'm a visual learner to some degree because there are certain things I can't do without a piece of paper in front of me. I just can't.
No. I think it's more of a, where does it start? Can it start with the thinking and go to the visual, or can it needs to be visual first, and then you can go beyond that after you've taken the visual and then start to deeply think about it?
Right.
Because I've always been that way, where, I can learn lots of different things. I need you to show me at least once and talk me through it as you're doing it. And then I can leave you and go about my way and figure it out after that. But I need to see and hear it first. And then I can think about it and analyze it and figure out in my head how I'm capable of doing it because of how I am and how I do things, as opposed to how you do things.
Yeah. You need like a video capture that you can refer back to, like, okay. Oh yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. One other thing about the scrap paper. This is the hardest thing. And I think this is the hardest thing for everybody, but in particular, I will focus on myself. Learning to recognize your thoughts. Sounds ridiculous. What I mean by that is I could be listening to an episode of Joe Rogan. For anybody that's listening to an episode of Joe Rogan, that usually means I'm in for at least 3 hours of content. During that time, I am thinking about things. That's why I like listening to that show. But sometimes I get so wrapped up into the show that I don't recognize I'm having a thought. So it's happening, but it's happening in this passive way. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson was the last one I listened to.
Yeah.
And they're talking about a black hole. Well, all of a sudden I was probably thinking something about a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean I have to write down every single thought that's in my head, but anything that's novel or anything that's useful, I have to learn to be able to recognize those and not let them just slip away in the stream of all the unimportant thoughts. Like I watched the documentary on the Satanists trying to put up a statue next to the Ten Commandments because they wanted religious plurality to be represented. That they want to show that there's more than one. It's called Hail Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Watch that. I could have just been like, oh, good documentary. And I had thoughts during it. But then I was thinking like, oh, being able to recognize like, oh, I'm thinking about the implications of the Constitution right now. I'm thinking about plurality. I'm thinking about the difference between doing something to shock people and doing things to prove a point. Mm-hmm. These are all things that I can write down. All the other thoughts that I had during that, like, that guy has a weird face or something like that. Don't need to write that down. So that's a very important to be able to filter and recognize your thoughts. And that's a skill. Like I'm barely learning that one. I catch myself afterwards and go, oh, I really enjoyed that episode. And I have to ask myself like, why?
Right. Yeah.
What was I thinking about?
Are you getting stuck on the wrong points? Are you getting, I find myself getting, lost in like too many of the ridiculous like what ifs, like expanding beyond what was actually being held in context. So I feel like I suffer from the same thing you do, but in the opposite direction, where I like start going way crazy beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
Not super basic of just like that guy should not comb his hair that way. It's like, like what if, just crazy implot. I mean, I haven't seen that documentary, so I can't even say like where my crazy thoughts would go, but almost like, what if like Jesus was a Satanist? What if this was his true message? I just kept going. But I feel you.
Okay. And then now the other two forms of writing that are left. Journaling.
Journaling.
But the reason that journaling I think is important is because journaling is taking all those things all these little things. You're not going to do something with every single thing that you've grabbed in your scrap paper, but some of those things you don't really understand yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I had a thought about surveillance capitalism the first time I heard about it, before I had read anything about it, like, that's an interesting thought. They're collecting everything. What do I feel about that? Why do I feel that? I don't know yet, because I haven't thought about it yet, right? And I just captured it.
Yeah.
So journaling is a way to be able to do that. That you can sit down and go, okay, what do I think about that? And then write about 3 pages, because journaling is a process in the sense that from the beginning, you don't have to know where you're going.
Right. Well, you're not going, you're not really trying to get an end goal. You're just trying to be and continue on the journey into the unknown.
It's like you're taking it for a test ride.
Yeah.
Like, what do I have to say about this? I don't know.
I'm just out for a mental walk here.
It's like a conversation where you don't have an agenda.
Yeah.
When you have an agenda, you're trying to get a point across. When you don't have a point to get across and you're just having a conversation, you have no idea what's going to go. Like a lot of my episodes with guests, I don't have an agenda. So I'm finding out where they go.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to be able to go through that process. What's his name? David Sedaris has this process that I find completely fascinating, and I'm more than a little bit jealous of. So he always has a little reporter notebook, which for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's like a little pocket notebook, except they're long. So it's like almost like the length of a pen.
It's like when you see in movies, when you have a reporter walk up and they talk and they flip out that black fold and they have a long, just white sheet of paper and they're just sitting there writing down and then they flip it closed. That's a reporter.
Exactly. And you can get spiral ones too, which are less fancy than that. I think that's what he uses. And some of them get really long. Like it's like, I don't know, like 6 inches long.
That's about average, I think, or just below.
Yeah, that's an average. I'm using air quotes right now. Reporter's notebook. But anyways, so he's
brought to you by Bang Bros.
He's continually putting stuff down, like we were talking about. He's using that as his scrap paper, right? And what he's writing down is, for him, if anybody's not familiar with him, he's very funny, but he has a very wry sense of humor, and his writing is somewhere between a short story and a memoir. Somewhere in there. Hard to explain if you don't know who David Sedaris is. And most of it, almost all of it, actually not almost all of it has to do with himself, in the sense that he's exploring his life. Either things that have happened to him recently, like I'm on the subway in London and I see this guy with the weird hat, so he's writing that in the notebook. Remember the guy with the fucking weird hat? Blah, blah, blah. Or he's remembering, when I was 6, my sister stole my marbles. Fucking bitch. So he's continually writing stuff like that down. Then what he does is every morning he pulls out the notebook and looks at what he'd written from the day before, and then sits and expands it. Every single thing. So my sister stole my marbles. Okay, let me tell the story of my sister. I'm making the sound of a typewriter right now, which I don't know if you guys can hear. My sister stole my marble. Let me tell that story. Let me try to remember every detail I can about it, and just types it all out on a typewriter. And then I think it's a typewriter. It doesn't really matter. Everything. The guy with the hat. Let me write down everything about the guy with the hat. What else does that make me think of? He just writes it all. And it's not all going to be something he's going to publish. But he just writes all of it. And then maybe he uses a computer. I can't remember. But I know that he gets it all printed and then he binds them. Like, those, I think he uses those plastic spiral things.
Yeah.
Where you punch 1,000 holes in the side and then stab that shit through.
Yeah.
And then those are his journals. So he'll go through, and then when he wants to expand something into a book piece, he'll go through those and go, okay, let me take this one and work on that one. Take this one and work on that one. But he's not using every single piece. I love that process. Just because he's taking a small thing, going somewhere with it. So that's a great way to look at thinking. So he's using it as steps. And that journaling step is the fleshing out step. And then the last is the one that I used, which is authoring. or writing, which is when you're taking those thoughts and you're giving them a purposeful structure. Because even in journaling, you don't have a structure. So now you're taking it, you're going, okay, I should start here, and then I should go here. And then my point is that now you're actually working on the actual architecture, like I said before.
Yeah, because you've taken the jumble of ideas, you've given them tangibility, and then you can step back and look at them, lay them out without trying to remember all of the ideas, and have your brain kind of flush out and be empty, and then just be like, okay, this one, I can take this one, and this one can go with this one, and I can find a way now to just take this one and connect them. And
now we're doing what we wanted, right? Connecting thoughts.
Now yeah, exactly. The thoughts are busting down.
But those are even those bust down, Tatiana. I almost missed it.
You almost did.
I was like, I'm in the middle of a thought. Wait, caught it.
Anyway.
But I still think that even that structure of authoring is still an introductory phase of connecting thoughts.
Yeah.
But even if we did all of the steps of the writing that we talked about right there, we still wouldn't be at the thing that I want, which is to write things like that guy was writing. I think you have to do all of the steps. You need the good input. You need the talking conversations. You need the silence and the walking and the passive and the active thinking time and the silence. I think I said twice. And then you need all the steps of the writing. You need all of those because all of those, the ones before the writing, feed into the writing part, right? The more things that you're going to get in that scrap paper, the better those things are going to be if you're doing all the stuff before. So I think they're all integral into that. So like this is like what I've written out here is literally a game plan for myself to get to that place. Like these are things you need, like this is almost like a letter to myself. Chad, these are things that you need to do if that's what you want. So I think ultimately what I'm saying is the moral of my story, which is if I want my thoughts to connect more, I have to work at it.
Yeah.
I have to use system 2 to set forth a plan to create it. And that was probably my biggest problem is I wanted something, but I wanted it to happen without work. Yeah. I wanted it to happen reactionary, system 1. But it's not system 1. That's system 2 thinking. And if you're going to do system 2 thinking, you need to use system 2.
Yeah. You got to commit.
And that's literally like, I think about that. I'm like, well, why don't I spend more time at my desk? Like focusing on something like, hey, let me write this out. Let me just sit here and work on this. And that's a good question, right? When you take it back and you look and you go, most of the time you find you're like this thing that I want, that I think I'm actually capable of, which is an important thing to clarify. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to be a female supermodel tomorrow. I'm not capable of that because number one, I'm not a female and I'm not hot. But having something you want that you're capable of achieving and putting it forth in front of yourself and going, okay, what's my plan? I think I lost like the middle of that sentence somewhere or that thought. Did that make sense? I feel like I got sidetracked by the supermodel thing and I missed a chunk there. Did that what I was saying make sense or did I jump?
I don't know. I was thinking about you in ballet slippers as a supermodel.
So one more tangible
ballet thing. Bear. Yeah. And what? Huh?
Not as tangible as the image that you've just put in everyone's mind.
You're the one that created it.
But for example, all of this thought, would it work? Or am I just spitballing here? Would this actually work? And I say it absolutely would work because my journey to this episode required me doing all of those things.
Yeah.
I started with no connected ideas.
Right.
Like here's very short rundown of how this thing came about. I'm getting good input. I'm reading the Red Hand Files number 59. Boom, there's a spark about, the what's right before you. I take that spark and instead of just letting it go, I write it down. And then I'm doing something later and then I'm remembering that weird studies thing and I'm going, okay, oh, yeah, that's what I want. How do I get there? The thing right before me. Okay. And all of a sudden I'm starting to put these things together and I'm going, okay, let me do a little searching. Let me do a little research into this topic. And then boom, I have this reference to Daniel Kahneman, and then I'm remembering that book. So now I'm connecting to something I've read before. Now, I didn't remember all of the details of System 1. I actually had to reread some things. Mm-hmm. But now I'm able to connect those thoughts. Now I've got 3 things connected. And then now I'm coming, I've got this outline, so I've structured it out, but structured it out close to a journaling situation, right? I didn't really journal on it, but I did just throw down a bunch of words. I didn't, sit and like try to create a written piece about it, right?
Right, you have the rough draft.
Yeah, I just, like a first thought equals tags or whatever. System 1 equals bus about to hit you. Just little notes. And then what did I do? Actually, there's a period of time where I had some silent contemplation because I was just kind of hanging out before we recorded. Then I came in, had a conversation. Now I've talked this out with you. Now, between your input and things that have occurred to me during this episode that aren't included in this, I've come to a better understanding, and I've connected so many thoughts. So I could, if I wanted to, sit down and write a piece about this because now I understand it well enough to be able to do that. So I think it absolutely does work.
I'm seeing it work. I'm in the middle of it.
That's another reference to another episode. That's a Lamb episode. I don't remember what we were talking about. I said, we're doing it now. And he's like, you just blew my mind.
Good stuff.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed that. A little bit of nerdiness. If you would like to support this show and my cognitive process, you can go over to patreon.com/Holyfool Productions. And what you will find is a bunch of random things that I've made in the past, but you're going to find the first 30 or 40 minutes of this conversation where Tom and I did not talk about a specific subject, and we just had some random chatter where we just kind of had fun, talked about barbecue and Instagram and Queer Eye, and what the hell else did we talk about?
I don't remember.
So long ago. So long ago.
I'm too old to remember.
I'm going to be doing these with Lambs. We'll have the first 30 minutes or so conversation for Lamb will be available for $5 and above tiers. And when I have guests, instead of the beginning, I take the end of their conversation because we continue past. So there's like a half hour with them as well. So every week you should be something bonus. And if you guys have missed Tom or you missed him because you're not following him, maybe you should know that he is on Instagram as
Sir.Beardo. Sir.Beardo. Sir, the punctuation, little boop down there on the bottom. Beardo. Beardo. And there is an @ symbol in front of that, but I figured most people know that these days.
Yes. You guys are also welcome to follow Latte on Instagram if you like looking at dog pictures. And of course, you can follow the show at Random Badassery on Instagram and Twitter.
Tell them how to find Latte. Latte like the drink.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part. Latte like the drink. One word. You know what I've been doing? I've been enjoying over there is using the stories to repost 5 of my favorite dog photos for the day.
I haven't seen that.
It brings a little joy to my life.
Lots of dachshunds and hoodies.
And lots of puppies, right?
That's cheating. Puppies are easy.
Yeah, that's okay. When it comes to dog, you want an easy dog. You don't want.
No, I just mean as far as like getting attention for cuteness.
Oh yeah, definitely. And of course, if you guys like this episode and you're listening in Overcast, now's the time to hit the star. We're above Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell. Holy shit! Thank you guys.
I know. Goddamn.
We beat out Conan and Oprah. I don't know how the hell that happened. Let's
fuck
keep
those
doing it.
Two. Well, no, don't fuck
I love them. You can share this episode with somebody if they think that they'll appreciate it.
Tell all your friends, your family, everybody.
Post it in their phone. Download it onto their phone for them.
Force them to listen to it. Play it while they're sleeping.
How about you steal their phone and you can rate and review it on Apple Podcasts
and take a picture of your wiener.
I just had to leave an awkward silence there. Not for us.
What? I'm the only one that does that? What?
He means for them. He means for them. Okay. I think we are going to leave now.
We'll leave it on the wiener.
Bye-bye, babies.
See you.